Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, part of the Believe YouTube Podcast Network. And we are locked and loaded on a Sunday afternoon, 3:25 Central Time. Hope everybody is enjoying that. But I figured, you know what? The combine is essentially over. Yes, the fat guys are running, and yes, they matter. And yes, scouts should be paying attention to it, and general managers should be paying attention to it. And if you actually have a real draft board you're building, you should be paying attention to this. But for most of us, the real juice of the combine is over. The defensive players have all gone and done their thing. The wide receivers and running backs yesterday and quarterbacks who decided to participate went and did their thing. And the today it's the big guys. It's the offensive linemen. And I'm sure there's some defensive players at some point still to go. But again, the combine is over. So it is over. And now we must restack everything. We must rediscuss. We must get into all of it. But first, I want to tell you about our presenting sponsor here on the Stillman and Company program, and that is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. In fact, today I actually had a question about my home for Hiller, and I reached out to Hiller, and I was like, hey, can you guys help me out with this question I have for my home? And I never hesitate to do that because Hiller takes great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. That's right. They've been in business since 1990. They are family owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be here. The service is free. And if a customer is not pleased with the work that Hiller performs, they will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. They'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face truck today. Okay. First of all, salute to TDG and everybody else that's in here. And we will get to your comments as well. Get the live chat going and leave a comment. Who do you want at number 4? And we are all assuming that Fernando Mendoza is gone. So here we go. The combine is over. It's time to re-rank the Titans' realistic options with the 4th overall pick. So let's reset the board right now. And I think there are 7 people who we can have a legitimate discussion about, with the understanding that Arvell Reese probably goes to the Jets at number 2. Again, we pull up Braden Gall's pre-combine big board. Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza is off the board. He is not going to be available to the Titans. Plus, the Titans aren't going to take Mendoza anyway. Although, did you guys see the Matt Miller article, the one that I used to talk about all the time, where Cam, I think, ranked 18 of 21 quarterbacks taken in the first round with Shedeur Sanders over the last 5 years going into last year's draft? And now they've redone it. So Burrow's out, and Herbert's out, and Tua's out. And it's the last 5 years, and Mendoza ranks 8th, and Cam ranks like 18 out of 20 or something like that. Only Michael Penix, Kenny Pickett, and Jackson Dart are behind Cam Ward, for whatever that's worth. But Mendoza is off the board. Jeremiyah Love, he's certainly in the discussion. David Bailey. And then there's the other receivers, Arvell Reese, Carnell Tate, Reuben Bain, etc. Okay. So I think there are 7 guys that we should talk about as far as this is concerned post-combine. And these are in no particular order. Number 1, Arvell Reese. And Arvell Reese, the edge / inside backer at Ohio State, did everything he needed to do this weekend at the combine. He did the edge drills. He did the linebacker drills. He measured in well. He did everything well. Arvell Reese, again, we thought before all of this he was going number 2. It feels like Arvell Reese is for sure going number 2. Number 2, Reuben Bain. Reuben Bain did not do the drills, but he did check in with sub 31-inch arms. And that does, in my opinion, eliminate him from consideration as a 4-3 defensive end, which is what the Titans would be looking for. If he gets lined up against a Trent Williams, or he gets lined up against a Tyron Smith, a prototypical left tackle, they're going to just push him back. He's got to have the arm length. Are there things you can do to make up for it? Kind of, but you can't make up for it when you're going in a mano-a-mano fight with somebody else who's elite. So I think the arm length is a problem for Reuben Bain. And because he didn't do any of the drills, he didn't have the opportunity to impress people physically with what he knew was going to be a problem with his short arm. So Reuben Bain, he's on their way. Jeremiyah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. Jeremiyah Love absolutely murdered the scouting combine. His testing was off the charts. Then he showed his versatility by doing drills at the running back position and doing drills at the receiver position. Jeremiyah Love absolutely put himself in the top 10 running back discussion in the NFL today. And he put himself, in my opinion, in the discussion of, hey, it's running back, but there are some running backs that are so good they're hard to pass up. The same conversation Bijan Robinson was in, the same conversation Ashton Genty was in, the same conversation Saquon Barkley was in. I absolutely believe Jeremiyah Love this week proved that he belongs in that discussion with those guys who were the top players in their classes, regardless of their position. And Jeremiyah Love might be the best player in this class. So let's keep that in mind. David Bailey, number 4. Cemented himself, I think, as the top pure edge rusher in the draft, which is where he was listed before all of this. And while he didn't do a lot of good, because, again, like Arvell Reese, he was already up towards the top, I think he cemented himself with where his standing is. Again, I said on Friday, he's the top pure edge rusher on the board. I don't think anything's changed. Number 5, Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate cost himself millions of dollars by running the 40 yesterday. And I know some people are going to tell me that the 40 time doesn't matter. And people will say, just look at Jerry Rice's 40 time. First of all, Jerry Rice, there is not a bona fide, legitimate 40 time for Jerry Rice. It's all kind of an old wives' tale of, oh, I heard Jerry Rice ran a 4.8 40. I heard Jerry Rice ran a 4.65. I heard Jerry Rice ran a 4.55. I don't know what Jerry Rice ran. It was a different game. It was a different era. It was a different everything. And so I don't know if Jerry Rice was slow or not out of Mississippi Valley State. I don't know what the combine says he was or wasn't. Again, there's not a documented time for him. The 40-yard dash matters. And I don't know what his training told him or what his trainers or agents told him. That did it tell him he was going to run sub 4.45? Because if he wasn't sure he was going to run 4.45 or lower, he shouldn't have run. And that 4.23, which I think was the official number, that's bad. Especially when other guys are out there running 4.2s. And to me, it cements what Carnell Tate was in college and what I think he'll most likely be in the NFL, which is a solid number 2 receiver, but a receiver that is more based on possession than explosion. Now, again, you can be based on possession over explosion and still be Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's totally possible. But the explosive guys, when it comes to the 4th overall pick, those are the guys we're talking about. Randy Moss is the kind of guy we're talking about, where you draft Randy Moss and that athleticism is so far off the charts that Randy Moss shows up on the first day and is the best guy in the building. Well, Randy Moss was a 4.38. Julio Jones, when he came out of Alabama, he was explosive. He could jump over anybody. He could run past anybody. And that's why he was Julio Jones. And Julio Jones ran a 4.39. The difference, I've told you guys, between A.J. Brown and Treylon Burks. A.J. Brown was 4.49. Treylon Burks was 4.55. There's a difference. Carnell Tate is closer to Treylon Burks than he is to A.J. Brown. Now, just because you aren't a burner doesn't mean that you can't have a good NFL career. I mean, it certainly doesn't mean you can't be a great receiver. There are guys all the time that run sub 4.5s. They get picked in the 3rd round or 4th round and have great careers. Puka Nacua is an example of that. But again, we're talking about guys that go in the later rounds. I'm talking about using a pick on the 4th overall draft choice. And if you're going to be the 4th overall pick, and this team's saying, hey, this is our wide receiver 1 of the future, you got to be the complete package. Number 6, Sonny Styles. Sonny Styles' testing was off the charts that he took a guy who was considered to be, hey, he's a great prospect, but he's an off-ball linebacker, and he's an inside backer, and that just doesn't have the value in today's NFL that a quarterback, a receiver, a corner, a pass rusher has. So Sonny Styles, great player. He'll go in the top 10, but he took that guy, and all of a sudden everybody's like, did you see that freak of nature, Sonny Styles? Holy crap. Again, it went from this guy may be a great inside linebacker, but again, that's what, the 9th pick in the draft, to could this guy be a generational linebacker with his freak of nature testing? Now, here's the problem, though, if you're the Titans. You've got to figure out, and this is for every team in the league, you've got to figure out, is Sonny Styles going to be a really good inside linebacker, or is Sonny Styles going to be a generational inside linebacker? Because there are a lot of good inside linebackers in the NFL, and you can go get a good inside linebacker in free agency. Devin Lloyd's out there right now from Jacksonville. He's a good inside linebacker who could fit in this system. And then there's Ray Lewis. And I'm not saying that Sonny Styles is going to be Ray Lewis. I don't know. But I ran through the testing, and I basically asked, I put all the testing into AI, and I said, who is the true comp for what Sonny Styles did athletically at the combine? Like, who is the comp? And AI basically said, it's Fred Warner, but he's bigger and faster than Fred Warner. Well, Fred Warner is the key to whose defense? Robert Saleh's with the San Francisco 49ers. So Sonny Styles absolutely has to be in the discussion. And then I put Caleb Downs as the 7th player. Again, I think that we can legitimately talk about 7 guys. Caleb Downs crushed the combine as expected. Many came into the season thinking Caleb Downs was the best player in the draft, and he didn't do anything at Ohio State last year to make you think that he wasn't. But my question is, what kind of safety is Caleb Downs? And I looked at his PFF grades, and his coverage grades were good, and he does intercept the ball. He had 2 last year and 1 pass breakup and 1 forced fumble. But if I'm going to take a safety with the 4th overall pick, it's got to be Ed Reed. Like, it has to be top of the line Ed Reed type player in order to do that. You know, again, just using not the comp as to how they play, but the comp to the production. If I draft Caleb Downs with the 4th overall pick, he's got to be Sean Taylor or Ed Reed. If I draft Sonny Styles, he's got to be Ray Lewis or Brian Urlacher. You know, Hall of Fame guys, gold jacket guys, guys that are absolutely the key to their defense the second they're on the field. If I draft Jeremiyah Love at 4, Jeremiyah Love can be Eddie George, and I can live with that. And Eddie George is not a Hall of Famer. But that's just, if I'm going to draft Caleb Downs, he's got to be, he can't, Minkah Fitzpatrick's not good enough. He's got to be better than that. And Ed Reed had 9 interceptions in his last year at Miami and 8 the year before that. There is not a safety in today's game, not Kyle Hamilton, nobody that I would take with the 4th overall pick. Not saying Caleb Downs isn't a good player. He's a very good player, but I would just take other guys before him. So those are the 7 guys that I think are in legitimate discussion for the Titans with this draft pick. Arvell Reese, Reuben Bain, Jeremiyah Love, David Bailey, Carnell Tate, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs. So now let's eliminate some of the options. Number one, I'm eliminating Bain, Tate, and Downs. And I think I can do that pretty quickly. They just don't check all the boxes for me. For Downs, it's just that he's a really good player, but I don't think he's a coverage monster. And again, if I'm drafting a safety with the 4th pick, you've got to be Sean Taylor, who is both a coverage monster and a thumper. So it's kind of a production thing, but if I'm going to draft Caleb Downs with the 4th overall pick, I'm going to need unbelievable production. And he just didn't have unbelievable production. He had good production. Downs is out. Bain's out because of the arms. Sorry, but if I can draft David Bailey or Arvell Reese, who do have all the measurables, I'm drafting them over Bain because, again, Bain doesn't have the measurables to be a top 4 pick. See ya. And I am eliminating Carnell Tate because Carnell Tate, again, 4.5, what was it again? 4.53, I think was the official time. And by the way, Adam Schefter, what a bitch move by Adam Schefter to put out a tweet today saying, well, some general managers and some executives actually clocked Tate faster than the scouting combine. Yeah, the scouting combine that uses a laser sensor on their timing, the most sterile environment you will ever find for running a 40. That's beneath you, Adam Schefter. That's embarrassing. If I worked for ESPN as an executive, I would pick up the phone and call Adam Schefter and say, I need your sources on these general managers, and I need to see proof. Because you cannot just go there and lick Drew Rosenhaus's tush the way you did with that tweet, which is what it looks like. You cannot do that if you are just going to sit back and say, I think that Carnell Tate actually did run fast. No, he did not. He was slow. Fast guys run fast. Remember that. So I'm out on Carnell Tate. So now we've just gone from 7 to 4 because Downs is out, Tate's out, Bain's out. That leaves us with Reese, Bailey, Love, Styles in no particular order. So I said, let's rank these 4 players based simply on production and measurables. So let's take out positional value and let's just rank these players. And so, again, I've actually been using AI. AI gets a lot of things wrong, but if you kind of set it up, if you give it the historical information, then it can compute stuff pretty quickly. So I said to AI, I said, okay, I want you to take the production historically of running backs and of inside backers and what they do in college and compare that to the NFL. And I want you to take the measurables and compare that to what happens in the NFL and rank those 4 players for me with a 0 to 100 grade. And so here's where it came out. Number 1, Jeremiyah Love with a 92. Elite running back traits and production, speed, power combo like most top 5 NFL backs. Number 2, Sonny Styles, 90 out of 100. Freak athlete, solid production, high ceiling 3-down linebacker. Arvell Reese, number 4 at 89. Says versatile hybrid, strong production and strong testing. And David Bailey, 87 out of 100. Prolific rusher with good burst, but is a pure edge focus. So again, I ran this through AI. I said, rank these 4 for me. Position, take that out of it. Love, 92 out of 100. Styles, 90 out of 100. Arvell Reese, 89 out of 100. David Bailey, 87 out of 100. So make of that what you will. So now we're the Titans. And this might be my favorite part of the entire discussion. So we're the Titans. And we're looking at these 4 players. And since we have the 4th pick, we're obviously going to be able to get one of these guys. And because Fernando Mendoza is for sure going with the number 1 overall choice in the draft, then we can rank these 4 guys, and we know we'll have a choice between at least 2 of them. Probably, most likely, 3 of them. So with that, number 1 thing would be, what's the need? Well, good news about being so shitty. There's a need all over the place. All over the place, there's a need for the Tennessee Titans. There's a need at edge rusher. There's a need at running back. There's a need at, and I don't care about any player that's currently on the roster, whether it's Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, Jermaine Johnson, Cody Barton. None of those players are worth saying, I have the opportunity to get Sonny Styles, but do I need Sonny Styles because I have Cedric Gray and Cody Barton? Yes, you need Sonny Styles. If you could get Sonny Styles, Jeremiyah Love, Arvell Reese, and David Bailey and get rid of players you already have, you would. So forget about need. So there's not a single player that would block any of these guys from being foundational pieces for the Titans. Then there's free agency. I've said that in free agency, I'd spend a buttload of money on Trey Hendrickson. But I'm not sure I expect the Titans to do that. And even if you do, Hendrickson is probably a 2-year commitment. This, when it comes to Bailey or Reese at the edge position, I think we would say, no, we want there to be a 6, 7, 8-year plan. By the way, Trent just put into the chat, had a son today, tighten up. Trent, mazel tov, my friend. We're very, very proud for you. Very, very happy. Congratulations to you. And we hope that Mom and Junior and everybody's doing great. Congratulations, Trent. Seriously, I remember when my son was born, it was on a Wednesday. The Titans were getting ready to play the Bengals. It was crazy timing. Lindsay's parents were coming in town because they wanted to come in town before Jack was born. And so I had gotten a parking pass, a physical paper parking pass for the Titans-Bengals game because I was going to take Lindsay's dad to the game. And then Jack was born on Wednesday, and so we watched the game at home. But congratulations, Trent, and enough about me. Okay, so we've got it down to 4 guys. And somebody just asked, what would your pick be? So I'm going to tell you. Here are my rankings as of today. And I put this on the Jared Stillman out of 10 Joe Alt confidence scale. And you might say, what does the Jared Stillman out of 10 Joe Alt confidence scale mean? Well, Joe Alt is the first 10 out of 10 that I can remember where I just knew it was the right pick. I knew he was going to be a great fit. I knew he was going to play right away. All the off the field I was convinced of, the on the field I was convinced of, the fit for the team I was convinced of, the need I was convinced of. Joe Alt was a 10 out of 10. And when Joe Alt went to the Chargers with the 5th overall pick, a part of me died inside. And so this is the Joe Alt scale. Number 1, David Bailey. David Bailey of this group is the most sure I feel about a Titan pick. And I don't mean sure I feel that he'll be good or that because I think Jeremiyah Love will for sure be a top 5 running back in the NFL. I can't say that David Bailey is for sure going to be a top 5 edge rusher. But David Bailey plays the most premium position, and unlike Arvell Reese, he for sure plays the most premium edge rusher position. Plus, I cannot get over the college coach who told me that Bailey was an absolute freak, that he was better than Abdul Carter, whom this guy coached against both Bailey and Abdul Carter. And I just can't get over the fact that the best edge rushers in the league make $40 million a year for a reason. Even if he's not a true number 1 guy, like a Will Anderson Jr., but he ends up being like a Daniil Hunter, that's probably worth the 4th overall pick in a draft. Number 2. And by the way, out of the Joe Alt out of 10, I give David Bailey a 7.5 out of 10, where he absolutely fits the need. I think he fits the scheme. I think he's got really good talent. He checks all the boxes. He has the measurables. But I'm not certain he's going to be a dominant edge rusher. He gets a 7 out of 5 out of 10. Number 2, Arvell Reese. And I have Arvell Reese as a 7 out of 5 out of 10 too. You know, Arvell Reese in games where they asked him to be a pass rusher at Ohio State, he performed pretty well. He had 8 sacks, according to PFF, on 104 pass rush snaps and 23 pressures. That basically means that a quarter of the time he was getting to the quarterback. Now, Ohio State played some real crap bums last year, but he even was good in the Texas game, rushing the passer. And if Arvell Reese doesn't fit as a pass rusher, which I'd be surprised by given his tape at Ohio State and his athletic ability at the combine, Arvell Reese absolutely can be an inside backer, and probably an inside backer at the caliber of a Sonny Styles, though not as sure of a thing as Sonny Styles. So I go Arvell Reese, number 2, put him at 7.5 out of 10 on the Joe Alt 10 scale, just because there's that question about position. And if he does play on the edge, then there's no sure thing at the edge, but feel pretty good about Arvell Reese. Number 3, Sonny Styles. Boy, you Jeremiyah Love people are not going to like this. I think today I would take Sonny Styles over Jeremiyah Love, and it is tough. And it's tough for me to not take Jeremiyah Love. It's not that I don't want Jeremiyah Love. I would love to have Jeremiyah Love. But we'll get to Jeremiyah Love in a second. I dock Sonny Styles on the Joe Alt 10 scale. I put him at a 7.25 out of 10. Because of the positional value of inside backer. If inside backer was a premium position the way tackle, pass rusher, or receiver is, Sonny Styles would be a 10 out of 10. Sonny Styles had production in college. He was an All-American last year at Ohio State. He won a national championship at Ohio State. He is a freak. And his athleticism is through the freaking roof. But he's not a sacker, which is what Bailey is and what Reese projects to be. But, man, he could be a generational inside backer. With that athleticism, he could be like Javon Curse playing inside linebacker, running sideline to sideline. Again, think bigger, stronger Fred Warner. Damn. And then number 4, Jeremiyah Love. And I give Jeremiyah Love a 7 out of 10 on the Jared Stillman Joe Alt scale. And that has nothing to do with Jeremiyah Love's ability. If you were to ask me, Jared, do you think Jeremiyah Love is going to be a premier running back in the NFL? I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. He checks every box. He's got all the production in college. He's a great receiver out of the backfield. He is insanely fast, which this team needs speed. Jeremiyah Love is a dog. But how many teams have drafted a running back high and have won with that running back? Really, since the last collective bargaining agreement, or maybe the last 2. Ashton Genty? No. Bijan Robinson? No. Saquon Barkley? Didn't win in New York. Christian McCaffrey didn't win in Carolina. Even guys like Eric Dickerson and Barry Sanders made their teams better, but they didn't go to the Super Bowl. Barry Sanders might be the greatest running back who ever lived. And the Lions were never able to get over the hump. And then there's one other thing I cannot shake. And this might just be a me issue. That if we were in the draft room and I was general manager and I had my assistant general managers and, senior executive player personnel, whatever the fuck you want to call it, my top lieutenants. And I'm sitting there in the draft room and we're talking about Jeremiyah Love, and these guys are banging the table for Jeremiyah Love. I cannot get over the 1998 draft. And there is a name that many of you have probably forgotten by now. Curtis Enis. TDG. You remember Curtis Enis? When Curtis Enis was the 5th overall pick for the Bears? And Jeremiyah Love's going to be a bust the way Curtis Enis was a bust, because I don't think Jeremiyah Love's going to be a bust. But I think back to the dynamics of that 98 draft. And I watched the 98 draft on YouTube about a year ago. And what was crazy was there was all this talk about Manning or Leaf, who's going to go. And then Manning went. So then that storyline was over. And then ESPN moved on to 2 really big storylines in the 98 draft. How many teams were going to pass on Randy Moss, which was a topic the entire day. It was not like Randy Moss was Tom Brady and teams didn't think he was going to be good. Teams knew Randy Moss was going to be really good. They just also knew that Randy Moss had a really checkered past. And the other was Chicago at 5 had the inside track on the top running back on the board, Curtis Enis. And there were two teams that were just desperate in that 98 draft. And I think executives talked to the media more back then because it was less Twitter. It was less trying to make a big deal about everything. But they were on TV talking. Chris Mortensen was like, the Rams at 6 would love Curtis Enis. They want to move from 6 to 5, but Chicago wants a lot to move off of Curtis Enis. And then it was the Jags at 9. And they had 2 firsts because for some reason they had New England's first that year. And the Jags at 9 were the team that they wanted Curtis Enis bad. But the Bears said, if you want to move up, you got to give us both number 1s. And so it's 2 number 1s to move from 9 to 5 to draft Curtis Enis. That is how much people wanted Curtis Enis. You know what's crazy? Chicago ended up drafting Curtis Enis. Jacksonville, who desperately wanted Enis, they ended up drafting Fred Taylor. Fred Taylor ran for 10,000 more yards than Curtis Enis and 62 more touchdowns. That same draft, the Rams, they were desperate to get Curtis Enis. Couldn't get him. They picked 1 spot behind. They couldn't get him. A year later, they traded a 2nd and a 5th to Indianapolis for Marshall Faulk. And Marshall Faulk rushed for 7,000 yards with the Rams and scored 58 rushing touchdowns with the Rams. Curtis Enis, again, everybody thought, everything that you think about Jeremiyah Love, everybody thought about Curtis Enis in 1998. And I'm not saying that Jeremiyah Love's going to be Curtis Enis because I don't think Jeremiyah Love's going to be Curtis Enis. I think Jeremiyah Love is going to be Bijan Robinson, maybe even better than Bijan Robinson. But I just can't get over how many times there have been running backs that have been picked in the 3rd and 4th round that have become absolute superstars. There have been guys that have been picked in the middle of the 1st round that are better than the guys that are picked at the top of the 1st round. And I know that happens all the time. Receiver is another position where that happens all the time, unless it's Jamar Chase or Calvin Johnson on the board. But I struggle with the fact that the teams that have drafted these running backs have not won Super Bowls with these running backs. Saquon Barkley and the Giants, they didn't win. He went to Philly and he won. Christian McCaffrey, and I know San Francisco hasn't won a Super Bowl, but he didn't win in Carolina. He went to San Francisco and won. It's these guys going to teams that aren't good, and then they're not capable of elevating the team. Ashton Genty last year. That's my holdup on Jeremiyah Love. Now, let me say this. If the Titans drafted Jeremiyah Love, he would be the fastest player on offense, and he'd be the best player on offense immediately. He would be better as a running back today than Peter Skoronski, who is the best player on offense, is as a guard. And I also think if you draft Jeremiyah Love can carry the ball 20 times a game. And I love that for Cam Ward. And I love the ability for Cam Ward to throw the ball out of the backfield to Jeremiyah Love. You need 3 pass catchers. Davis, Jonnu Smith, A.J. Brown. You need something like that. Right now, you probably have 0. Now, I want you to trade for DJ Moore. That would be 1. But if you draft Jeremiyah Love, then I am here to tell you right now, as soon as you draft Jeremiyah Love, he becomes the best player on your offense. But I still can't get over Curtis Enis. And this is not a Jeremiyah Love problem. This is a running back-ist problem. And I struggle with that. Now, as of today, I am down to those 4 players, assuming that Mendoza is off the board, which he will be, and you wouldn't take him anyways. And I have them ranked right now: Bailey, Reese, Styles, Love, in that order. But that is not set in stone. And there are two very important pieces of information that I don't have that the Tennessee Titans do have. Number one, the medical, because all four of them had a world-class physical done at the Indianapolis hospital that is as invasive of a physical as these guys have ever had. And the Titans have all the info, I am sure of it, on all four guys. And the meetings. And the cleanest medically would absolutely get a bump. So if the doctors looked at Jeremiyah Love and they came back and they said, Jared Stillman, this guy is built as mechanically sound as you could ask a human being to be built, then he would probably get a little bit of a bump. And then there's the meetings, because I do believe that if the Titans are going to get out of the shitter, it's going to have to take a step forward this year, and then really next year is where that core is going to have to solidify. The same way that we saw the core of that second window Titans, it really solidified in that post. You know, the first year they were 9-7 under Malarkey. That second year was where that core really crystallized. Lawan and Derrick Henry and Kevin Byard and that group. And so I need some real leaders on this team. Simmons right now is one. Cam Ward right now is one. Who else is going to fit into that leadership group? And if I walked out of a meeting with Jeremiyah Love and I'm like, this guy is Eddie George off the field, then Jeremiyah Love gets a huge bump up. If I walk out and I'm like, for Sonny Styles, this guy is going to walk in and demand and get the respect of everybody on defense, then he would get the bump up. And I didn't meet with those guys. So I don't have the info that the Titans have as far as the medical or the meetings are concerned, and I think that's very important. Now, before we get to your reaction on all of this, I want to sort through the talk. The first thing was Robert Saleh hyping up Reuben Bain on Tuesday about, I don't know what the measurables will say, but the tape says he's awesome. And Matthew Berry, which, again, I was kind of surprised by on Friday. Matthew Berry, of all people, hearing that the Titans think Jeremiyah Love is the best player in the draft. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here. I am not sure how to read this because I don't know Robert Saleh well enough to be able to read in between the lines of what he says. I can do that with Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel had one of those earlier this week where he talked about his relationship with A.J. Brown, and Mike Vrabel knows that A.J. Brown is out there on the trade market, and I think the reason Mike Vrabel finally dove in about how close he and AJ are as people and how much they support each other and how much they love each other and how much all of that is because Mike Vrabel knows at some point he's going to have a conversation with AJ Brown about that $29 million. And he's going to have a conversation about if AJ Brown wants to be a New England Patriot, he's got to take less money. And so Vrabel's got to butter up AJ, who does care about that, to try to get AJ to take less money if there's a trade going on there. Again, I can read in between the lines with Vrabel. Vrabel talked about Kyle Williams, the kid out of Washington State that a lot of people thought the Titans were going to draft because of his connection with Cam Ward. And Vrabel talked about developing a number one receiver, and maybe Kyle Williams could develop into that. And I'm like, that, I know Vrabel, that is Vrabel basically setting Kyle Williams up this year to fail. The same way he did with Caleb Farley. We're going to give you every chance, son. And knowing in his heart that he can't do it, so that then when he can't do it, Vrabel can say, I gave him every chance, which is what they did with Caleb Farley. But I don't know Robert Saleh well enough to be able to tell you that when Robert Saleh says something like that, is Robert Saleh trying to really throw you off? Was Robert Saleh trying to, I don't know him well enough to be able to tell you that. I don't know his tendencies when it comes to the way he talks. And then with the Matthew Berry thing, I think Matthew Berry is very good. I mean, very good at what he does. He is a fantasy football guru, which has in turn made him more of a gambling guru. Because target share, I think he's going to get X amount of fantasy points. Now it's become, I think he's going to get X amount of yards. So go bet the over on that. But what connection does Matthew Berry have to the Titans? I mean, I don't think Matthew Berry made it up. I've met Matthew Berry a couple of times. I like Matthew Berry. He's been on my show before. I think his knowledge of all the players, given the fantasy ramifications, is amazing. But what? Who's talking to Matthew Berry? Like, it's one thing to pull Diana Rossini aside and say, hey, I just want you to know that we really like Johnny Joe, so that Diana Rossini can then go out there and put out, hey, Johnny Joe, Titans like Johnny Joe. Like, you're telling Diana Rossini that so that Diana Rossini will do what you wanted to do. Matthew Berry? Like, has anybody thought, you know what? We're going to start a rumor. And we're going to start this rumor through Matthew Berry, the fantasy guy on Sunday Night Football's pregame show. What? So I don't know where or how to read that. My gut is this. Never believe anything you hear coming out of the combine. And I mean never, unless it's something obvious like sources say the Dolphins may end up releasing Tua. No shit. They've already released their entire team. They fired the coach. They fired the general manager. Duh. They benched him last year. That's easy. But a lot of the stuff coming out of the combine, I don't believe a lot of it. Because this is smokescreen season. But Matthew Berry doesn't have a reputation of starting shit. There's this one guy who this time of the year blows up on social media because I think he just makes a bunch of shit up. His name's Tony Pauline. He just makes a bunch of shit up. And it gets out there like, Tony Pauline reported, and then it goes all over the place on Twitter. I'm not sure the guy's ever been right about anything. That is not Matthew Berry. So I can't just dismiss it as a smokescreen. But again, Matthew Berry? Like, really? And finally, I just want to hit on this. PK reports that the Titans are interested in bringing Chigakonkwo and Kevin Zeitler back. I'm fine with Zeitler. I'm fine with really any free agent guard. Zeitler makes the most sense for me. He's a veteran inside the room, which of course they need. And I think because he worked with Latham last year, they'll pick up where they left off this year. He's a pro's pro. I'm fine with Zeitler. But Chig is actually kind of confounding. Because if you want to bring Chig back, then you're acknowledging that Chig can't block, but you're okay with that. So if you bring Chig back, it'll probably cost you around $9 million a year. That's where Hunter Henry and Dawson Knox are from a free agent standpoint. I don't think he'll get to $12 million a year, which would be the transition tag, which is what Cole Kmet is at right now with the Bears. And while Chig ranked 47th according to PFF at the position, he had a heinous 27.9 run blocking grade, but a higher overall grade than guys like Jonnu Smith, Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, just to name a few this past season. And I would take Jake Ferguson on the Titans, and I would take David Njoku on the Titans, and PFF says Chig was better than them. I just think that there are so many average free agent tight ends out there that do block better than Chig that I wouldn't commit myself to bringing Chig back, especially if you're going to draft Jeremiyah Love. Like, if you're going to draft Jeremiyah Love, then I don't think you need to spend the resources on a tight end who cannot block, unless it's using a 5th-round pick on a guy that is an athletic freak at tight end who you'll get the ball to and he'll run with it on a 5th-round pick salary, kind of like Chig. If Chig could block, I would absolutely want Chig back. But Chig can't block. And I want to run the ball. And I want to dump it to the tight end. And so I think there's going to be so many average tight ends out there that can block better than Chig, that what Chig has is the ability to run after the catch, which is great. I just don't value it that much. I'm not saying don't bring Chig back, but I mean, I do want to run the ball. My guess is the Titans are trying to sign Chig for about $7 million a year. I bet the Titans would go 3 years, 21.5 for Chig, and they'd guarantee the first 2. And I think Chig's probably thinking, yeah, let's get closer to $9-10 million. And maybe it's out there for him, but Chig could also be the guy. Chig could sign 5 minutes into free agency and it wouldn't surprise me. And Chig could be out there for 3 weeks and it wouldn't surprise me. And I do think New England would be a team with interest. because I think they're going to move off of one of their veteran tight ends, either Hooper or Henry, this offseason. So I wouldn't rule out Chig to New England, but man, you got to block better for me if this is going to work out with Chig. All right, let's get to some of your reactions here on the program. Here today, I wanted to make sure to leave time for your reactions on a special Sunday show. And so TDG is banging the drum. He says, Jeremiyah Love at 4. People are seeing what I said a week ago. Let me say this. I have said the Tennessee Titans care about what people think. The Tennessee Titans care what Twitter thinks. I know this. I know this because I know who's on Twitter with the Tennessee Titans, and they care. Twitter loves Jeremiyah Love, and the Titans love doing things that Twitter loves. And so I'm not saying that you guys for sure have a say in this, but just based on the recent history of everybody thinking they were going to hire Matt Nagy and Titans Twitter being like, oh, no, not Matt Nagy. And then immediately everyone on Titans Twitter is like, no, Saleh, please, Saleh. And then they hire Saleh. I think Amy's on Twitter too much, and I get the way that Twitter has exploded with the Titans fans wanting Jeremiyah Love. I can see Amy wanting Jeremiyah Love too. Brian says Chris Brazel from UT running a 6'5", or at 6'5", running a 4.37 is crazy. You know who I'm impressed by? And I don't know him from a jar of X. Trey Lance's brother Bryce is a wide receiver at North Dakota State. I think he runs in the 4.3s, and he is fucking huge. And I'm like, can this guy play? Like, can he catch? Because I don't watch North Dakota State football, and somebody showed me a highlight. Granted, it's a highlight, but a highlight of Trey Lance's brother Bryce, who runs a 4.3, with making a one-handed catch. And I was like, put him on the radar. Put Bryce Lance on the radar. In fact, I want to see if PFF does their, I'm sure they do. Bryce Lance, PFF. How did he catch the ball this year at North Dakota State? Goddamn. 89.3 receiving grade. Not bad. Again, make of it what you will. He scored 8 touchdowns at North Dakota State last year. 6'3", 209, and again, he runs in the 4.3s. That's my guy right there. Go ahead and put me down as a Bryce Lance guy. But Brazel, I thought, was good. JV says, what people want to know, who do you want them to draft? Who do you think they'll draft? And what are the chances they trade down? I don't think there will be a lot of interest in people trading down for the pick. I do not think that the 4th overall pick will have a lot of value. I think there will be a lot of players that teams like, but not players that teams would move heaven and earth in order to get. Now, there's always a random team out there like Jacksonville last year that just fawned over Travis Hunter, and maybe one of these Ohio State guys, whether it's Reese, who may be there at 4, but probably not, or Styles or Downs will be there, that one of these owners and GMs will just be in love with, and so they'll make the trade. I do not think the Titans will have a taker for the 4th pick. I think it'll be like 17, when the Titans were waiting on calls for that Corey Davis pick and nobody called. I think it'll be like, Mike Mayock told us at the Super Bowl when he was in Oakland and they were on the clock at 4 in 2019 and they ended up drafting Cleveland Ferrell and they wanted to trade out of that pick, but nobody called. And they called half the league, and half the league said, no, thank you, we're not interested. I think there's a chance that it could, when all is said and done, be that nobody wants that pick. So I don't think they're going to trade down. Who do I? All right, so my board, just a second with the audio there. My board that usually controls this ended up popping down a little bit, and I don't know if my board is toast. That board has been good to me since 2021, and I don't know if it's toast, but it fell off the desk, and we might have to set Shiva for our board here. But that being said, I mean, I knew what to do to back it up, so I hope that doesn't kill anybody. Okay, who do I want him to take? I mean, I would be happy with any of those 4 guys. And I don't have the medical information, and I don't know them in the meetings. Jeremiyah Love would be fun. I mean, Jeremiyah Love would be fun, and I do think he would take pressure off of Cam Ward. Again, my ranking right now, Bailey, Reese, Styles, then Love. But, TDG says, send me the invoice. No, TDG, that's okay, man. We love you for what you bring to the table every single day on the program. One person said, Jared is like John Robinson's revisionist history. He'd be missing sometimes too. We talked about Anthony Richardson on Friday. I loved Anthony Richardson. Now, again, what the Colts did with Anthony Richardson is not what I would have done with Anthony Richardson. But, I mean, I still like Anthony Richardson now. Don't get it twisted. I still liked Anthony Richardson in 2023, and I do not pretend that I didn't say that. I mean, there are times I like guys. Everybody misses. You know, I heard Rand on his interview with Buck, and he was like, you know, hey, I knew there was going to be criticism because the best guys hit 50% of the time. The problem with you was you hit about 1% of the time. Ernest Jones. That was good. Cedric Gray in the 4th round looks to be solid. That's about it. You know, that's not 50%. I'd say I hit it about 50% for whatever that's worth. One guy says, I don't understand the Trey Hendrickson obsession. So here's the one thing about Jeremiyah Love that I do get a little excited about. If they draft Jeremiyah Love, then they have to sign another edge rusher, right? And it can't just be some Scarbini edge rusher like Kwity Paye. Like, they have to sign a real edge rusher if they end up going that route. I think I'm right about that, right? Like, if they end up drafting Jeremiyah Love, then that means there is no Arvell Reese and there is no David Bailey. And so, what, are you going to have Femi start? No. So maybe if they draft Jeremiyah Love, it'll get them to sign Trey Hendrickson, even though I think they should sign Trey Hendrickson and then go into the draft and take the best player on the board no matter what. But I like Hendrickson because I think Hendrickson is a top-of-the-league edge rusher, and you wouldn't have to trade a draft pick for him. I think Henderson's PFF grade last year before he got hurt was 82.9. He is a 17.5 sacker a year guy over the last 3 years until he got hurt. I mean, yeah, he's 31 years old, but there's got to be a little bit of risk involved in a lot of this. So that's my obsession with Hendrickson. I love Hendrickson. I think Hendrickson's a leader, and I think Hendrickson's the kind of guy they need. This guy on Twitter at I Will Do It at New York Jets said, time to hit some cardio. Let me say this. So New York Jet fans, holy crap. So I went on Jake Asman's show whenever the Sweat trade went down. What was that? Wednesday? I went on Jake Asman's show. Jake Asman does a show on ESPN New York, out in New York. He's also does some shows on Mad Dog Radio. I'd say Jake's a friend. He's a good guy. And Jake was like, he texted me and said, hey, can you come on the show? I said, sure. So Jake said, what are Jet fans getting in T'Vondre Sweat? And I said what we've been talking about for 2 years, that T'Vondre Sweat is lazy, fat, and that he'll never reach the pinnacle of what he could be. That's all I said. And these Jet fans got so upset about it. This one guy did an entire 3-hour show about my comments on T'Vondre Sweat. 3 hours. And I still get messages on every single social media channel about people being like, you do not understand. I'm like, I don't understand. I followed T'Vondre Sweat's career every day since the second he was drafted. You just heard of T'Vondre Sweat, looked up his ranking on PFF and said, we just traded for Warren Sapp. That's the difference. And the amount of people out there that get upset or get so in their panties whenever you say something like, man, Carnell Tate's slow. Yeah, I bet you can't run a 4.53. Well, no shit. But I'm not a receiver trying to be in the NFL. We're comparing him to other NFL receivers. Goodness gracious. It drives me insane. All right, that's it for us. Great special Sunday show back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I bet there will be so much news and so much drama and so much shit that comes out between now and 2 o'clock. That's why I put this out there. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Again, we keep upping that subscriber number. I'm actually really impressed. And I don't know if it's my doing or if it's your doing or if it's Sarah who runs our social media. If it's her doing, I don't know. But everybody's doing a great job. Jared Stillman, see you all. Like and subscribe right here at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Or if there's some breaking news, you know I will be on it. Thank you for joining me on this special post-Combine Stillman and Company show.